Hello, this is Angelia with today's Bible reading. Today's reading comes from Exodus 21, personal injuries. Remember we were reading before about the, rules as far as slaves, which, again, it's sad that that's where humanity was back in that day, that God had to deal with them on that level. But now he's coming to personal injuries, something that our laws today still deal with. He who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint you a place to which he may flee. So see, God said manslaughter is not as bad as murder. And like I said, I believe in sin, intention plays a big part. So there's some folks, that they're fooling people. They're not fooling God. However, a man acts presumptuously towards his neighbor, so as to kill him craftily, you are to take him even from my altar, that he may die. So God instituted the death penalty for murder. He who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. So see, that's a pretty strict punishment there. So if any of you have ever, fought with a parent physically, you would be dead. He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or he is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. So again, if you're kidnapping folks, and committing slavery, if you sell them to slavery, now wait a minute, earlier they just said slavery was permissible, but now if you sell the man, then you're going to be put to death. So again, some people point out these contradictions, but again, you have to remember God is dealing with the folks, the Israelites, on their level, which was not very high as far as, love, compassion, and understanding at that point in time. And again, if he's found in his possession. So, again, you're not supposed to be kidnapping folks. He who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And I know a lot of folks, I've heard a lot of cursing of parents. And when I say that, I mean cussing. I've never actually heard somebody put a curse on their parent. But, so that was the rule there. If men have a quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or his fist, and he does not die but remains in bed, if he gets up and walks around outside on his staff, then he who struck him shall go unpunished. So if you just maim the dude, you don't have to get punished for that. He shall only pay for his loss of time. So, a fine, I guess. And shall take care of him until he is completely healed. And again, the priests would have to enforce that, because I'm sure that's not going to be something, if you already beat a dude up, that you're going to be willing to do. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and he dies at his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken. So, again, the severity comes into play there. For he is his property. So again, Jesus is going to change all that later on. If men struggle with each other and strike a woman with child so that she gives birth prematurely, yet there is no injury, he shall surely be fined as the woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judges decide. So again, the woman was property to the man back in the day. So, that's where they were on that level at that point in time. But if there is any further injury, then you shall appoint as a penalty life for life. So, again, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. So it's like Hammurabi's Code here in the Old Testament. God was trying to impress upon them the severity of sin. Didn't always work with some folks. Still doesn't in this day and age. But that was God's severe punishment for these things. And of course, later on, Jesus is going to say that's not how it was meant to be. This is how God dealt with you in your infancy. But now we expect better. If a man strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he shall let him go free on account of his eye. So, blind was a big deal then. And if he knocks out a tooth of his male or female slave, he shall let him go free on account of his tooth. So, again, you were expected to treat your slaves with some common decency. If you blinded them or, knocked their tooth out, you're supposed to let them go because you were a bad owner. Ain't that crazy? If an ox gores a man or woman to death, the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall go unpunished. So even animals were held to the same strict standard. If, however, an ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner had been warned, yet he does not confine it, and it kills a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall also be put to death. So back in that day, nowadays we don't have oxes running around goring people, but some people do have dogs that, do these things. So back in that day, you wouldn't just go to court, you'd be killed if your animal killed someone else. If a ransom is demanded of him, then he shall give it for the redemption of his life, whatever a demand is made of him. So, again, some folks might rather just have the money than have you killed. So there was some wiggle room in their legal system. Whether it gores a son or a daughter, it shall be done to him according to the same rule. If the ox gores a male or a female slave, the owner shall give his or her master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. So again, sometimes there could be a price. So, I have some opinions on some of these laws that, maybe they weren't all inspired. Maybe some of them were just put down by men. But again, God was dealing with these folks at their level. So it could have been inspired by God. I wasn't there. I don't know. I just know, like I said, if you read the Bible over and over and over again, you get a feel for who God is and who Jesus is. And like I say, he deal with the Israelites a little differently than he deals with the folks, later on. If a man opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it over, and an ox or donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution. He shall give money to its owner, and the dead animal shall become his. So, if you got a well that you haven't covered and an animal fell into it, then you got to pay the guys whose it was, and then you have a dead animal on your hands to do whatever you want to with. That's great. If one man's ox hurts another's so that it dies, then they shall sell the live one and divide its price equally. And also they shall divide the dead ox. Or, if it is known that their ox was previously in the habit of goring, yet its owner has not confined it, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal shall become his. So again, there's some restitution, some wiggle room, in that. So let's see what our biblical scholars have to say about this. Let's see, where is it start? I guess right here. The laws relating to personal injury from man or animal were preceded by the most serious of injuries, homicide. The death penalty was prescribed to intentional homicide only, whereas for unintentional homicide, the penalty was banishment to an appointed place, which later God revealed were the cities of refuge. No degree of sanctuary applied to one guilty of premeditated murder. Death by accident at the hand of another is something unplanned by man, but which God let happen. The law did afford sanctuary, but away from home and vengeful relatives, often for life, because there the one guilty of involuntary manslaughter remained until the death of the high priest. Disrespect for parents seen in physical and verbal abuse of them by their children was so serious it was designated a capital offense. Commandment 5 was a serious matter. Another ancient law code, such as the Code of Hammurabi, I mentioned that earlier, also respected parental authority and prescribed severe consequences, although not the death penalty. So people talk about how bad Hammurabi's code was, and it was actually a little more lax than God's prescriptions laid out here. Yeah. Punishment of slaves was considered the right of the owner, but did not allow for violence. Judges were to decide the appropriate punishment if the slave died. If the slave lived a few days, it was evidence that the owner had no intent to kill, and the loss of the slave was punishment enough. A beating without death immediately ensuing was construed as a disciplinary matter, not a homicidal one. Any permanent personal injury brought freedom and loss of a master's investment. So, see, their slavery system was a lot more humane, if you want to ever call slavery humane, which I wouldn't, than the one that we had here in the USA back in the day. The master's power over the slave was thus limited, which made this law unprecedented in the ancient world. Compensation was mandatory for accidentally causing a premature birth, even if no injury resulted to either mother or child. Judges were brought into the legal process so that damages awarded were fair and were not calculated out of vengeance. Which, you know how the legal systems are today, fair is not always something that happens. The principle of retaliation, or ex talionis, applied if injury did not occur to either mother or child. The punishment, matched but did not exceed the damage done to the victim. The welfare of a pregnant woman was protected by this law, so that unintentional maltreatment constituted culpable negligence. Significantly for the abortion debate, the fetus was considered a person. Thus, someone was held accountable for its death or injury. And of course, again, because this is the American Standard Version, they worked that in. Because nowadays, that's a heated debate. But my personal opinion on that is, if a woman gets pregnant by consent, that is a pregnancy. If a woman is raped, or they can call it incest, but generally incest usually is rape. Not too many people voluntarily are having sex with relatives. Then that was not her choice. And any physical creature can reproduce. So I'm saying that's not always God's will. I don't think he's got that much interest in certain things. He brings about people he wants to bring about. But anyone can have a child. Any flower can reproduce. Any animal can reproduce. But, again, I feel like choice matters. And if you want to argue on that, I don't even want to hear about it. Don't even message me or comment and give me none of that crap. Because then I'm going to ask you, what would you do if your 12-year-old daughter was raped by a relative and got pregnant? What would you do if your 13-year-old daughter is walking home from school and got gang raped by 5 guys? Are you going to tell me you're going to force that young child, not even an adult yet, to have that child? Because then, in my opinion, you're guilty of abuse because her body is not physically ready to be giving birth to children. She might be having periods, but again, she's not fully grown. And that's going to stunt her growth. That's going to affect her whole, system, all her hormones, all her physicality. So again, that's my opinion. And your opinion might differ, and that's fine if that's how you want to live. But as for me, I could not live like that. I could not force that onto a child or another person that did not voluntarily make a child. We all know how you make babies. If you don't, you need to go talk to somebody and ask the question. So if you're voluntarily doing what it takes to make a baby, then yes, I believe you are responsible for that life. But if that was forced upon you and you did not voluntarily participate in that, then I believe that is of the devil and of the person who did that to you, with the devil working through them. And I don't believe that you have to. Now, there have been people who've chosen to. I know a guy whose mother was raped and had him because she didn't have a man, and she, had prayed that she wanted a child, and then that she ended up getting raped and then got pregnant. And so, I believe individual choice can be a factor in that. But, as for me, I would never force my daughter to have a child that she did not want, that she did not participate by choice. And then people go into the adoption thing. Okay, there are so many children who are not adopted. They have problems throughout life. They have mental and emotional issues. So, again, you can get into the religion of it, the philosophy of it, but there's honestly no good outcome when a child from rape is forced on a child themselves to give birth to that. That's my opinion. Like I said, if you disagree with that, I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. That's from my personal experience. Most of y'all know I worked with women who were survivors of sexual abuse, and assault, and I've seen too much to believe that's okay. So, animal owners were held responsible for death or injuries caused by their animals. Since the owner was guilty of negligence and not of an intentional crime, he was able to make payment to escape the death penalty. Again, judges were brought into the process to ensure that no vengeful decisions were made. Shekels. A shekel weight is 0.4 ounce, or 30 shekels would weigh about 12 ounces. Christ was betrayed for the price of a slave. So there you go. Jesus was betrayed for the price of a slave. So, that's, I believe, probably figurative. I probably believe he did that on purpose. And so that is the story of personal injuries laid out in Exodus. Amen. Please like and share this word so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want, to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. The links to that are in my posts. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.